Well, hi there, and welcome to ChessBase Workshop. My name is Steve Lopez. Thank you for clicking on that link and joining us. We're going to look at creating an opening tree in ChessBase 10 today. Now, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can get games into the tree. We're not going to go through all those, but we're going to show you the basic process of creating the tree and one method of putting games into it, a method you'll probably use a fair little bit. So let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to create an opening tree today on the Roy Lopez Exchange. Big surprise there. We've been using the Exchange as our template for the last several videos I've done on creating opening keys. So let's just stay on the same horse and we'll do the Roy Lopez Exchange as our opening tree also. First thing you need to do to create an opening tree is you need a blank tree, a base for what you're going to do. So you need to create the files. You go over in the ChessBase desktop database desktop window, which is what this is. Go to the file menu, go to new, and go to database. You're not going to see a command here for creating a new opening tree. Go to file, new, and then database. Even though you're not creating a database, just trust me. Click on it. And you get this, new database.cbh. Well, we don't want a CBH file. But notice down here it says save as type. Gives you different ways to create different databases. PGN, CBF, which is old school ChessBase format, CBH. And, you guessed it, books. Opening books, opening trees, same thing. So we click books, *.ctg. Hey, check it out, new database. .ctg. We're going to change the name of it also. We want something a little more memorable and relevant. So we're going to put Roy Exchange. I don't have my glasses on, so this is a little difficult. Roy Exchange.ctg, and it's going to go into the work folder. However, you can also change the folder by using these buttons over here. Put it in whatever folder you want. Click Save, and when you've done that, check it out. We have a little picture of a tree, royexchange.ctg. We can double click on it, and of course we get nothing because there's nothing in the book yet. We haven't added any games. That's the next step. But what we've done is created an empty tree. We've created the files. It's a receptacle to put these games in, and they're going to be turned into an opening tree when we copy games into it. So where do we get our games from? Well, there's piles of different ways. You can drag and drop a whole database over into this icon if you want to, but we're not going to do that. I just want Roy Exchange games, so I'm going to go to the Mega Database 2010. I'm going to right click, going to do a search, and click reset, and we go to ECO C68 to C69. Those are the two ECO codes of the Roy Exchange. I just happen to know that because I play it. So we've got, that's going to be our search. Everything that has ECO code C68 to C69, that's the Roy Exchange. We click OK, and we wait. Takes a couple seconds, and bang, there's all the games of the Roy Exchange. I looked at this earlier. There's over 19,000 of them. Now, how do we get them into our opening tree? Click on the first one on the list. Right-click, edit, select all. It highlights all of them, all 19,000. Right-click again, edit, clip or unclip. We're going to clip them. We're going to send them to the clipboard. So go ahead and click that command. That was quick. It only took a couple seconds to send these games over to the clipboard. We then return to our database desktop. Basically, you go down to your bar down here at the bottom, your Windows taskbar, and click the ChessBase 10 button to go back to your database desktop. Notice we have a clip database over here. Way off over here on the right. Yours will appear in a different place depending on how many database icons you have, of course. But it looks like a clipboard. It says clip database. Click once on it, just to look. And then down here on the game list, there's all the games we just saw, Minkwitz, Von Schmidt, etc. So they're all there. How do we get them from the clip database into the Roy Exchange tree? Very simple. Right click and hold, I'm sorry, I lied. Left click. Left click here and hold down the mouse button. Left click, hold down the button. Move this over on top of the Roy Exchange CTG icon and then let off the left mouse button. And now we have a dialogue that we have to explain. What is all this stuff? First of all, the top thing says games. The default is the number of games that are in the source, in this case the clip database. Game 1 through 19,415. Yes, we want all those games, so we don't change this. Include variations. We'll jump down here for a minute. This is also easy to explain. If you're bringing games in from an annotated database, as I have done with the mega database, you may want to have variations included. It's up to you. Whether you want to include variations in the tree or not. There's pros and cons. Pros are you get more information that way. Cons are that frequently variations include references to other games that may already be in the database elsewhere, and it may skew your statistics. The other thing is sometimes they put variations where they show how one side or another can blunder. If you're going to use this as an opening book for use against a playing program, for example, you may or may not want that. Sometimes the playing program may go right into one of these blunder lines and blunder material away and give you an easy win. On the other hand, you may want that in there. You may want that to happen once in a while. So there's various pros and cons for using include variations. It's up to you whether or not you want to put them in. The thing we had to look at here is length. Length of the opening tree, length of the variations in the tree. Very important. The longer the variations. If you're using this as a opening book for Fritz or Ribka, Shredder, Hierarchs to use in playing against you, the longer you make the book, the longer the program will stay in book, the longer the program will play known theory. You may want very long opening lines. You may want very short opening lines. You may want the program to deviate from book early. Again, there's different arguments for both sides here, whether you want very long variations or very short. What I will tell you is the longer you make the variations, the bigger the opening book as far as drive space. Now, I don't know that this is really a concern of very many people anymore. At one time, it was a big deal. One time when a 40 meg hard drive was a miracle of modern science back in the 90s, the size of an opening book might have been a very important thing. However, today, you can go out and buy a flash drive, 4 gig flash drive. Blows my mind sometimes. I remember back in the mid-90s, a 4 gig hard drive in a desktop computer was unheard of. Now I carry 4 gigs in my pocket every day, everywhere I go. I've got a little flash drive in my pocket. In my work as a historian, I end up using multiple computers, and you just never know when you're going to need to download, upload, whatever. So I carry a 4 gig flash drive in my pocket everywhere I go, which is why some people will say, is that a flash drive in your pocket, or are you happy to see me? Anyway, Groucho was great. The size of the opening tree is not really a big factor to a lot of folks. But if you go hog wild and make tons and tons and tons of opening trees and suddenly realize that your 80 gig hard drive has been filled up, then that's where you go to look for things to start deleting to free up some drive space, okay? But the bigger the tree, the more drive space. Not that big a deal anymore. Now, you've got length, which is a number that you put in here. Length is not the number of moves. And I hear you saying, what? It's the number of plies. We've gone over this before, but it never hurts to do it again. Every time a player makes a move on the chessboard and changes the position, that's a new ply. A ply is a half move. We talk about a game being 40 moves. Well, that means each player made 40 moves. That's actually 80 plies. This number is plies, not moves. So if you want an opening book that's, let's say 15 moves long. You want an opening book where it's 15 moves for each player, you need to double that number and make this a 30 instead of a 15. Otherwise, you're going to have a very, very short opening book, which is only going to be 7.5 moves, So make sure that you take the length that you want the book to be in moves, double that number, and that's what you put in this box. I want a opening book where each variation is 15 moves long, so I put in a 30. Length. Absolute length, ECO relative length. Absolute length, if I click that, every single variation will be 15 moves long. Every single game that is imported into that opening tree, all the moves will be in there up through move 15, or the length of the game, whichever is longer. No, shorter. Sorry, whichever is shorter. For example, If I have one where I want it to go 15 moves and 2 players play a 7-move draw, then that line will be truncated after move 7. They're not going to put in a bunch of bogus moves behind it or anything. That game will be cut off at the end of the game. But every single variation put in there for games of reasonable length, 40, 60, 80 moves, will be cut off using these using this 30 in here will be cut off 15 moves in. ECO relative length gives a little more control to the program. What it basically means in plain English is mainline variations will be 15 moves long. Weird little sidelines may be cut off earlier if they're side variations that are seldom played. Basically, the more a game is played in practice, in actual tournaments, in games in your database, the longer those variations will be. Weird little sidelines that are only played once in a blue moon get cut off earlier. It's up to you the way you want to do it. It's entirely your choice. I go for absolute length usually, but again, it's personal preference. Once you've filled out everything here, we have 19,415 games. Our variations are going to be 15 moves long, absolute length, so we're not going to have the program truncating some lines earlier. I've opted not to include variations this time. We click OK, and we get a progress bar. And you will see very quickly this does not take very long to do with only 19,415 games. Now, if you're up in the millions of games, it'll take a fair bit of time longer, but 20,000 is not too bad. So, bing, we're done. Just that quick. We can go to Roy Exchange, CTG. You're not going to see anything down here in the preview pane because there are no games. It's a tree. To see what's in it, you got to double click on it. You get a new window. And we notice something right away. This is really cool. We notice that some Roy Exchange games don't begin with one E4. And you right away are going, say what? It's a transposition. So many chess players are hung up on move order. You have to play moves in a certain order or it's not that opening. Well, let me put the lie to that right now and I'll show you how. Knight F3, Knight C6, then E4, E5, Bishop B5, and we've got a Roy Lopez. We backed into a Roy. Notice, too, there are other lines that can be played here that are not exchange variations lines, but we'll transpose at a later time. But here, the normal line, of course, would be A6, and then take, and away we go. And then there's a whole pile of different moves here that White has played, but we notice the castling. As we saw in our last video, castling is the one that is played the most often. But notice that you can absolutely back into a Roy Lopez by playing Knight F3 as your opening move. And I've run into several players in my amateur chess career that have done this. And I tend to find out that they tend to be a little bit scared that you know openings better than they do. So they try to find clever ways to back into an opening and try to trick you into not realizing that they're playing a Roy here. I don't care. This is a Roy. If I'm playing black and I fail to see if this is a Roy, I have no business anywhere near a chessboard, you know. But there's different ways to back into openings, and that's one of the cool things that an opening tree, an opening book, can show you is transpositional possibilities, these little tricks that you could try to play on your opponent, they could try to play on you to get into a position, to get into a variation, to get into a whole opening system, in this case, by a different move order. So that's the value of using an opening tree. And as I was talking about last week, if you're creating opening keys, this is a cool way to do it. You can get to positions very quickly this way just by banging through some moves. And I can look here and I can see all the different replies to D take C6 and use these to create opening keys, as we saw in the last couple 3 ChessBase workshop videos. So that's just one of the many uses for creating an opening tree. So now you know how to do it. You just create an empty tree and drag and drop games into it, and then once you know how to fill out that little dialogue that asks you for specifics on how you want your tree constructed, the program will do it, and actually does it fairly quickly. So that's how you create an opening tree. Till next time in ChessBase Workshop, have fun!